promise we'll get to actual doing some coding and whatnot. But a lot of the feedback we got last semester was people just trying to feel comfortable navigating around. So hopefully by now you installed R and R Studio and you've set it up the way you want it to look. And so what I wanted to go through on this video was talking to you guys about how to kind of make your first RMD file. Remember, RMD stands for R Markdown, and that is what this code over here is looking like. And that is what you guys are going to do. That's what we're going to be working in basically this semester. When you turn in your labs, they're going to be Markdown files. Now, the big power, or the thing that is nice about Markdown, and maybe similar to things that maybe you've seen in other places like MATLAB, but the convenience of these Markdown is that we create them in this code on the left here, but then it creates these files on the right, correct? And so the nice thing is that it seamlessly moves between writing text to answer questions into code as well, so that you are able to submit a single document that shows both your coding and your math work, as well as your explanation, because there's going to be questions that are asking you to interpret things and explain your answers, right? So this is very much in the sense of a lab. If you've ever taken a physics lab or a chem lab where you have that lab notebook where you are going from writing to pasting in your charts and your results, same thing here. It's just we're able to do it much more automatically and simply. So we're just gonna, this one, I'm not gonna look at the code. We're gonna have some further videos about functions and how to actually do things. Here, we're just gonna see how the different parts and the formatting work, right? So on the left here is the RMD code in RStudio, and on the right is what the output we get when we knit it, right? So I have these open at the same time so we can kind of see what happens, right? So when you do your homework, you're going to get templates, but I want to make sure you understand what the parts are, right? So this part up here, title, author, date, that's obviously putting all this up here. And by what you put on the title, author, obviously change the formatting of size of fonts, bold, things like that. When we look in the code over here, anything that you see between these three, looks like kind of apostrophes there, those are code chunks, and those are going to, you can tell that those are code both by the fact that they are between those lines, also, and also because they are highlighted in a different color here, and because you have these little arrows here if you want to close to not look at them, and you can open them up again. Now, some of these code chunks may not output to the screen over here, right? And you can do that by this initial little statement that is in the braces here. That's where those little curly parentheses are, right? And so in this case, it says, hey, this is code that I need to run, but I don't need you to put it over here. I don't need anyone looking at it. So it says include equal false. So it's saying, hey, run this code, but don't actually output it to my pretty document that I'm going to put over here. All this one does is, this is some settings we'll keep in all of these as far as echoing our code in the other ones, right? Now, the other important thing that you'll use are these little hashtags. Now, what's important to know about hashtags is hashtags mean different things in the Markdown if they are in code or outside of code, right? So outside of code, which is what this is a chunk of writing. You can see that this writing is over here, right? But you can see that the double hashtag of Markdown has made Markdown a larger font and bold over here, which is important because it helps set sections, but it's also important because not only does it do that, but it is also breaking this out by sections. And so you'll see down here at the bottom, if you have a larger file over here, those denote your sections that you can navigate through, right? So this is saying, hey, my overall thing is taking a tour of R. I can then jump down to Markdown, or I can jump down to including plots. That was the next one down here, right? So in addition to breaking up to those hashtags outside, changing marking sections in your overall document on the right there by making them bold and larger fonts, it also breaks up your code here in sections to make it easier to search and jump around to. All right, then once we're writing in here, anything that you are writing outside of a code chunk, that's what those little pieces of code are called, chunks, which is, again, is the nice thing about using the Markdown, is that we can go seamlessly from a piece of code to a paragraph of text, back to a block of code. And each of those blocks of code, and again, R calls them chunks, can be run independently or all together. So it's very user-friendly once you get the hang of it. When we look over here, a couple of things, formatting, you'll see. You guys shouldn't need this as much in yours, but putting the brackets around stuff like this obviously turns that into a hyperlink in the output. By putting 2 asterisks around something, we bold something. I should have talked about it, but we have these double hashtags right here, right? I can just as easily go into here and say hashtag, 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 and then say this is a subsection. And then I can go ahead and say click knit again. Every time I make a change, if I want to see how it changes, I re-knit it. And now you can see over here that it has added a subsection. So for every for every hashtag that you put on there, it labels a section, a subsection, or whatever, making the font different sizes to kind of denote that. So, and again, it works down here for navigating your code. I'm gonna go ahead and take that out right now. Now, this right here is a code chunk, and it is doing a summary of a data set called cars. You don't need to know how to import that. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But this code chunk, I can click this arrow right here and it will run it to see what happens. So now it is running it in my code so I can get immediate answers and find the answers. If all I wanted to know was what is the minimum value of speed in cars, I could have just run it in ins4. Now I know it. But assuming I want that to be included in my output, you can see on the right here that when I knit this, not only did it format all my text, it ran all of my code and output it, right? So over here, it output 2 different little frames here. This right here is the code that I wrote, and this right here is the output. And both of this is going to be important for us as instructors when we're grading it, because we want to see how you did the code, and we want to see the output. And again, R does that very nicely. By putting that in there, it just embeds it directly in your text. So you could, ostensibly in your lab, say, here's what I'm going to do here, write your code here, get your output, and then you could have a explanation here saying, as you can see here, the minimum is 4, which means that we have a slow car, right? So this is the kind of meat and potatoes of what we're going to be doing. Or I'm sorry, if you're a vegetarian, the potatoes, I guess, that we're going to be doing throughout the rest of the lab. Similarly, up here, if you wanted to put in a new chunk of code anywhere, it's very easy. So I could say, hey, right between here and here, I want to put in a new chunk of code. Now, there are 2 ways you can do it. The easiest way is right up here. It says insert a new code chunk, and I can just click on that. It also says Control-Alt-I is the hotkey. So if I go ahead and click that, it's going to give you different code chunks. We're only ever going to be using R up here, so don't worry about those other ones. And you can just click R there, and now you have a blank code chunk that is not doing anything. If I want to delete that, I can go ahead and delete this whole thing here. And then if I want to insert again, I can click that, or like I said before, I can just hold down Control-Alt-I, and it will automatically add a R code chunk. Now I can put whatever I want in here. I can say, let's put in, let's say, what is the, let's put in just another summary of cars, keep it simple because we're not introducing anything new right now. And so I'm going to do that. And then I can run this individually. Now, what I can do also is sometimes you might have chunks. If I don't want to look at that right now, I can go ahead and close that. Sometimes you might have something that I did in one code chunk here that then is referenced down here. Maybe I say down here, I'm going to say X equals 5. Now, remember, until I run that code chunk, X doesn't actually equal 5. So I'm going to go ahead and say run that. And now you can see over here in my environment, yes, X is now 5. Now, if I go down here, I might say, well, I want to do X plus Y, and I want to know what that is. And I might say up here, well, you know what? I didn't define Y, so Y equals 2. And now I'm going to go down here to run this, and I'm going to get an error because it says, well, you never told me what y is. And I might say to myself, well, I did say, I told you what y was right up there, but I didn't run that code yet, right? So either, if you want to use things later, you got to do one of two things. One, I could run this individually, and then it would run that, it would set y. Or I can use this right here, which says, run all chunks above this, right? So this says, hey, run all the code up to this point so that if I need anything, it's there, then I can run that. I could also, if I go up here to run, I have several different options of run. I could run selected lines, right? Which means if I highlight that and I click selected lines, it will only run x equals 5. I can run the current chunk. I can run the next chunk, or I can just say run all of them. And so if I run all of them, it's going to run all of them in order. The same thing it's going to do if it knits it. And here now it says we have right here x plus y is 7, and it definitely runs, right? And if I wanted to, I could go ahead and reknit this, and now it's going to reknit it with my new chunks of code. And sure enough, now I have this paragraph here. I have my two assignments there. I have no output because there was no output, right? All I did was said x equals 5, y equals 2. There was nothing to output, right? But then we got down here, and now I have, from this right here, I have something to run right here, and then the output, then the second run, and the second output, right? So this is the general cycle that you're going to be doing as you go through here. You can also do plots, which we will talk about in one of the next videos of how to make it. Here it's just plotting some data, and it puts it out there, and it's right over here. And then it says right here, it says, note that echo equals false parameter was added to the code chunk to prevent it. That's what we were talking about before. I believe I said the include, I meant echo, I apologize. So this is in your beginning of your chunk. If you want to not put something out over here, you're going to say echo equals false. That's why over here it shows just the plot, but not the call to the plot. I'm not going to be too picky on you guys being that specific on there, but it is there for you to use. Also, this word right here, it's always going to say R there to let us know that we're doing R code. But then if you go to space and write any word there, that is the name of the chunk, which again, just like naming the sections, lets you go to, hey, there's my chunk 1 setup, right? Here's my chunk 3 that was named cars. Chunk 2 is the one I put in. I didn't give it a name. I could give it and say assign variables. And you can see at the bottom, as I type that, it is giving it a name. So the last thing I wanted to show about here, because this is something important, is we're going to ask you to comment your code. Hopefully you've done some coding. If not, this is a great way to learn. I'm happy to help you guys out. But there's a difference between the text that we have here, which is introducing what you're going to do and giving any kind of analysis that you are of your results of your graph, and then the comments, which comments to code are just very short, succinct things to tell you, to tell someone reading the code, what is this code supposed to do? Because you are going to be, as you write code, you may want to use one piece of code from one assignment in another one. And so code has a tendency to travel on its own. And so we want to add some real simple comments. And in fact, you're going to be graded not on how great your comments are, but just that you are including some. And so we talked about before how outside of code, these hashtags format your section titles. Inside of code, a hashtag means a comment. You see it's blue in there. So that means everything on this line, don't run it as code. This is just a note to myself. And so I'm just going to say give X and Y values, right? And so now when I knit this, you can see that it still puts that in there, but grades it out to let me know, hey, this is just a comment of what this is supposed to do, which is helpful because when it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, the person who's reading it or grading it, or even yourself trying to follow what you did, can let yourself know, well, that's what this code was supposed to do. I see where the mistake is. Now you can put that hashtag wherever. It doesn't have to be on its own line. If I wanted to, I could put here and remind myself, maybe X is my velocity, and then I could go down here and say Y is my acceleration, or something like that. So you can be as crazy as you want with the comments, but in general, they should just be succinct and short at a minimum to say, here's what's going on. You don't need one for every line, but you should have at least one comment for every chunk of code. All right, I think those are the main points of looking at these, the syntax, if we will, of just the general text versus code and how we run it and how we knit it and what it looks like in there. The only other thing I will add is be careful about, make sure you include spaces and lines before this, because if I were to delete that, that is all going to be one bolded line. If I knit this as is, I can sometimes still run into problems here. We don't have it, but if you ever have a problem where all of your, you have too much bolded, just make sure you put in an extra line space between your text so that we don't have just run-on sentences of trying to figure out where that's going. All right, I think that answers most of the basic questions of navigating the RMD and the formatting it. We'll definitely be introducing more as we go on, but those are the basics. On the next one, we'll show about how to upload the lab, and then we'll get into some actual functions. I appreciate you guys joining again, and see you in the next video or in class.